Monica, and today we are going to make some jewelry, and these are with the items, or some of the items that I received from my new friends at Victory Gems and Beads. So make sure you go check them out. Of course, I'll have them linked with my affiliate link to them below, as well as a 10% coupon code that you can use, Sparkle by Monica 10. That will get you 10% off of your order, so be sure that you check them out. And if you happen to forget to use my affiliate link, which will be below, just make sure that you let them know Sparkle by Monica sent you. If you recall, I just did a bead haul and I showed you what Victory Gems and Beads sent to me. And so over the next several weeks, I'm going to be doing some tutorials using some of these items that they were kind enough to send me. So I'm really excited about that. And I thought, because it's coming up on my birthday, which is May 9th, and then Mother's Day is May the 8th, I believe, that we would do a love theme for our mommies. Now, I'm not lucky enough to have my mommy with me, so I hope that you are, and if you are, make sure you give her a big hug. I wanted to go ahead and do a Mother's Day theme in love, so I'm using these hearts. Now I'm going to go over what I have here, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to make shortly. Now, Victory Gems and Beads has been in business since 1987, I believe, and they have been helping designers and companies find quality gemstones since then. They are established really in New York, but they travel across the country, and I believe they have about 40 stores across America, and they work with wholesalers, retailers, bead stores, designers, you name it, the hobbyists, all that good stuff. And they're also planning to upload more of their physical store inventory onto their websites and make that available. But if you happen to think of something, ooh, I wonder if they have this, just shoot them a message and they'll be happy to source that for you. And if they can't source it, odds are they might be able to create it for you. So just be sure to reach out and make sure that you let them know Sparkle by Monica sent you. So today I wanted to show you what I pulled out from my big bead haul that I got. Some of the stars that you see here are just strictly for decoration because they're in my pinks and blues. These lovely stars are man-made and they are called Opalite. I have a black one, a pink one, and a lovely white one there. It's like a translucent. They don't have any kind of holes in them. These would be something that either I'm going to just use as part of my little setup here on my beading design board, or I might wire wrap them. I haven't really decided yet. Now these other stars that you see, these are natural and they do not have holes in these, although they do offer some with holes on their website so that you could just string them onto something. Mine do not. These are a non-drilled blue opal 10mm size, and you can see the inclusions in those. They're very, very petite and dainty. Love that they're faceted as well, because every which way I turn it, you can see how it catches the light. But I've got several of those, and again, I could either use some jewelry glue, or I could just wire wrap. I think I'm going to use these primarily as my little board decor. I also have some black coated brass stars with holes in them. So these are nice metal pieces that I can use as pendants or charms. Really pretty. So I'm not going to be using any of the stars that you see here in the design for today. I will, however, be using the other materials. The first up are these beautiful sparkly 2mm black spinels, and I've got several strands here. So I'm going to pick these up, and you can see as I'm just, lightly moving around, man, do they pick up the light. Look at that. Look at all that sparkle. How beautiful. Again, these are 2mm and they are black and they're faceted, although you can't really tell that because they're so tiny. But look how beautiful. That is such a nice cut, and I'm hoping that this comes through clear for you. But I have, let's see, 5 strands of these. Now, typically what I'm going to be showing you from Victory Gems and Beads, as I understand it, are the sample sizes. They're just of what they typically carry in store and online. I believe I got the full strands here on all of these because they're right at 13.5, 13.25 inches. So a beautiful black spinel, and there are a lot of wonderful properties of this stone. One of the cool things I liked about this is that this helps to release negativity and frustration, fear, all of that type of anxiety stuff. And also, as a Taurus, the black spinel is a Taurus zodiac stone. We have several, but actually lines up with my birth month. This helps to promote encouragement, it's grounding, it promotes healing and renewal. Then next up are these absolutely beautiful hearts, and these are a Boulder Opal. Look at the lines in that. Gosh, aren't those fabulous? And the size, let's see, that's a 14 millimeter. Now, I believe I got a full-size strand of this as well. Yes, so I got 8 inches, and that is what it says on the website. And it's sort of like got the look of a smoky quartz almost, but with these white striations that run through it. And I mean, look at this. It's just so pretty. Now, these are not faceted. They're beautifully smooth, but they're still catching the light. And that's what I have been enjoying about all these items from this new company, Victory Gems and Beads, because the quality has just been beautiful. I just thought it was really cute that they put this on a bead wire and had the tassels on there, because then I can use these tassels for something. I mean, look how cute the tassels are. And they're blue. I love it. And next up, in order to break up the black spinel, I am going to use some of these beautiful garnets. These are, I believe they are these are 3 millimeter size, so they're just slightly larger than the spinels. And look at that sparkle. On the website, you will purchase this at a 13-inch strand. Again, I am getting samples of strands, but let's see what I'm working with here. Yeah, this is actually, so I got a full strand of that as well. So this is a 13-inch strand of these beautiful garnets, and these are natural. I'm going to be making some beautiful earrings with wire and these lovely stones. Now for wire, really you can do several different ways. I can't seem to find this shade of pink in my 18 gauge, but this is a 20 gauge wire. This is artistic wire in a very light pink. I want to say this is a 26 gauge wire. I don't have my wire gauge tool, but if you do, just put your wire into that and you'll be able to know what gauge you're working with. Either way, you could go with an 18, 20 gauge as far as your thicker wire to make the base of the earring the way that I'm going to be doing. And then as far as the smaller wire, all we're doing with this is we're going to be feeding that into these teeny tiny little stones and wrapping it around the larger wire to make it like a hoop. You could do like a 26, a 28, you could even do a 24 gauge. Now for those that might not be familiar with artistic wire, when you're making wire wrapped or any kind of wire working project, the smaller the number in the gauge means it's a larger wire or a diameter. So an 18, a 16, a 14, a 12. The further down we go, the more beefier, the more wider the diameter of the wire is going to be. The higher up your number goes, when we're, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, all of those, the smaller your wire diameter is going to be getting. So it's going to be almost thread-like. I mean, it's still a metal wire, and it's different from bead stringing wire. So again, I have a video on the different types of wires if you're interested in that for bead stringing or wire wrapping. This is in a very light pink, so I'm going to just use these two. Now, something else I might try, which I've not used before, is my little tool. It's an artistic wire tool. It's a mandrel set, and it's got different shapes so that I can make various different designs like you see here on this example. It is just different sizes as you go down the cone of each one of these types of shape. That's a rectangle, or a triangle is what they're calling it. This is a round, this is a square, and this is an oval. If you don't want to use any kind of fancy schmancy tools, of course, you can always just find something round. Depending on the size of the hoop, you could even, like, I could use this if I wanted to, because that actually might be close to the size I want. Now, I've also got a handy dandy jewelry jig, and as you can see, it's got the shape of an ear wire on this particular one here, so I might use this tool as well. I can also make these free form and not have to use a tool. So again, it just depends on how elaborate you want to go with tools. If you are just starting out and you don't want to invest in any kind of tools, then you'll figure it out in free form methods the way that I did when I first started out. Speaking of tools that you will actually need to invest in, will be your hand tools, your jewelry making tools. You will definitely want to invest in a nice pair of flush cutters, and the difference in this style of cutter and a regular cutter that might come in like a multi-tool kind of set is that this is flat on the back and pointed on the tip. Whenever I'm wanting to cut my wire, if I am in a tight spot or if I want something to be flush, meaning nothing's going to be like a pokey bit sticking out and getting me or getting my like long sleeve shirts or whatever. I want it to be flush on the back. Then next up, I love the bent nose plier in my right hand. I'm a right hand dominant. So I use the bent nose plier, which looks like a crooked finger here, and what it allows me to do is do all of the actions. If I need to do some wrapping, I will have this tool help me out to get hold of the tip of the wire and wrap it around. I can push and pull with that very easily versus me trying to do that with my fingers because I do have carpal tunnel. And then next I have some flat nose pliers. Now this is a company called Xuron, and I'm still kind of getting used to these, but in general they're very high quality tools and I have been satisfied with them. So a flat nose pliers I will usually hold in my left hand as whatever needs to be stationary, no movement. It gives me stability in my designing. And then I use my bent nose pliers to go around and round and round, usually whenever I'm making earrings or if I need to tuck in my wires. One other tool here is going to be this one-step looper here that I've got, and this is by Beadsmith. I will put a link below in the description to all of these tools as well as the beads that I'm using here for my designs. But this I can use with my artistic wire to create whatever size jump ring that I want to do, and essentially I'm just going to be wrapping that wire around, you know, whatever size jump ring that I need several times so I can make some circles, and then I'm just going to use my flush cutter to cut those in the middle, and then I might have like, you know, 2 or 3 jump rings of each size. So another helpful tool whenever you're working with the artistic wire, and this is different also from memory wire, so don't get that confused. This just kind of happens to be in a spool shape, but you can work with this via your fingers, or a tool that I love is my nylon jawed pliers. So I will use that to work harden the artistic wire, and that just kind of gives it a little bit more strength, but also gets out any little kinks that I might have and allows me to be able to straighten it out if it's from a spool like this where it's in a circle. I need to use a 3-inch piece of wire for each hoop in the 18 or 20 gauge wire, whichever one you've got. This for me is a 20 gauge, so I've got a measurement here on my Create Room mat that I have here on my dream cart, and then I'll just use my cut piece here to cut another piece since I'm going to need to make 2 little earrings. There's my 2 pieces, my large wire, and then I will need to have 4 feet or thereabouts of the thin wire, and that for me is the 26 gauge. But now you can see it's got some kinks here, and rather than just cutting that off and wasting it, either I could take my fingers and just run down through there, and that does the same thing. It heats up the wire and that causes it to be work hardened, which just means it gives it a little bit more strength. You don't want to have any kind of weak points in your wire work, and this is going to be something that's used sort of like a thread. So you want to be sure that if you feel anything with your fingers, like maybe a nick in that wire or the coating, because this is coated in the color that you see, then you want to go ahead and cut off whatever that is going to, like your problem area forward. But I don't feel that with my fingers. And then if you have this nylon jawed plier, this is where you can just hold it with your finger and smooth it out even better, because I have carpal tunnel, so sometimes I have dexterity problems, and this, see the difference in that? It's really, you know, flatten it out for me. I'm not going to unravel this entire spool, so I'm going to just take off through the loop here that I've managed to keep all my wire together. And if while you're doing that, you suddenly find that you've got a little bitty kink, but it's not a really bad kink in the wire, this can still be smoothed out. Okay, so this is my little 3-inch of wire, and I need to have a loop on either side because of the style of earring that I'm going to make. And so since my ear wire is kind of going, like I'm holding this and it's kind of going up towards myself, then I'm just going to take my round nose pliers, which is, I forgot to include that in my list of tools. That is going to make a loop for me. So I'm going to get right here about 1/4 of an inch down on my plier, and then I'm going to just turn that away from myself to make a loop and have it touch, and then I will be doing that same thing on the opposite end of my wire. Again, I'm holding it about 1/4 of an inch at the very tip of that wire, and then I'm just going to turn it away from myself to make a loop. This is what I have, a loop on either side. And then you can do one of two things. You can either just use some round form in whatever size that you would like to have the hoop, or you can use a tool like these here that I've got from the Artistic Wire Company. And most jewelry makers, you're going to find that you probably are going to pick up these handy little stackable organizers. I get these at Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby has them, all sorts of places that you would do your shopping for like craft supplies. But I have these in several different sizes. Now I want to have my loops facing outwards, so I'm going to go ahead, and my wire is kind of going that way naturally anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this about in the middle and bend it towards myself on either side of this. You can see that it's just being shaped to the roundness of that. That got me this far, and then I can just with my hands kind of come up further to where I make it as open or as closed off as I want. I don't want to make any harsh bends. If I happen to do that, then I can just put this back around my form and take my finger wherever that harsh bend was, and with my hand I can let the heat again work hard in that wire to knock out that little bump that I just made with my free form, and then go back and kind of work again. Now, the thing is, if you don't have something that's small enough, let's say you've got a Sharpie or you've got some other gadget that's rounded, and you'd want to use that instead. Like if you have a leftover spool, this is some other wire that I've got, you can use your leftover spools, don't get rid of those, and use that round shape if it's closer along the size that you want, and not have to have a tool. Now I just want to take it off. And there we go. I have just a little blurb right here on this one, and it's, you know, up to you. These are handmade. They're not going to be perfect like a machine did, but as long as your loops are kind of close to each other as far as the sizing, you don't have like a great big loop and then a small loop over here, because that would not be pleasing to your eye. This is the shape that we're going for. I want to be able to put my beads onto this lovely hoop that I have, and that's where the other wire's coming into play. I'm going to be essentially sewing whatever beads that I want onto the form that I have now created. And I could have actually put the heart I'm going to have right here in the middle, and then I'm going to have the other beads on the sides, and I could have just put this onto the thicker wire and then done the bending. But I find when I do that, because this is where the holes are on the side here, I find if I do that and I'm bending the wire with the main bead on it, then it tends to not want to be as smooth of a bend. Okay, so I just took my 20 gauge wire and cut off probably another 3-inch piece, and then just wrapped this around the smallest rung, or whatever you want to call it, of this step looper here that I've got, so that I can create essentially a coil. And then what I can do is come in here with my flush cutter, cut down the center, and I'm just going to pick like right here, because that's where this crazy wire ends right here. I'm actually just going to cut that part off because that's where it gets a little wonky. So I'm going to come over here where I cut where I made that cut right there, and I'm just going to actually cut all the way down the line of my coil. That's going to make some jump rings. So I have one more way to go here. But what you're left with, hopefully, are some jump rings in the color that you need, that matches what you're creating, in the size that you need. And then you just operate like you would with a normal jump ring. I just used this tool, and I don't know if I like it or not. I think the other earring maker tool that I used is better, but so that's all I'm going to do. I've got several of them here that I'm going to cut, and it was really hard as I got several of these wrapped around, because I guess the wire, the tension in the wire was a little bit too much, and it wanted to keep popping off of there. It is the same pink wire that I used for the main body of the earring, so everything will match. The only thing is, now this wire is a little bit different. This is artistic wire, but it's the same color all the way through. A lot of the artistic wire, especially the ones that's not the higher quality, that color does not go all the way through the wire. Either way, you're still going to have to use a file to file down the edges, and you might even want to touch it with some clear fingernail polish in order to keep that from hurting someone when they're putting that in their ear, especially if they got any kind of metal allergy. But of course, those with metal allergies really need to be using the hypoallergenic, like the stainless steel ear wires anyway. I think I've got most of these cut apart, and I'm going to put one of these on my finished earring to show you, and then we'll make the second earring together. This is the metal file that I like to use for my jewelry making stuff. I mean, you can get these at the Dollar Tree. Don't use a regular nail file that's the cardboard, because I mean, that's just really not going to do very well. So what I do is I just hold my earring in my hand and I go on a downward angle just right here on the edge. Now you can see again that this is the light pink color all the way through. A lot of times when you use the lesser quality of the artistic wire, you're going to see like a copper or maybe even brass sometimes in that center. I think this is the artistic wire brand for artistic wire, and it's usually got the same color all the way through, which I like that better. So I'm going to hold it at a downward angle, and it just depends on how you want to hold it. Just go in a downward angle as you swipe. You don't really have to do this too much. I like to go all the way around. And if you want to do this over a trash can, you can do that too, because it's just going to give little flecks of the metal onto my board or my table. And feel with your finger if you feel any kind of a rough metal bit that might hurt someone's ear. Of course, get rid of that till it's nice and smooth. Now this wire also is really good since it's colored all the way through, because as I make a swipe here on the edge, you're not removing the pink color. But now a lot of this artistic wire that is not the artistic wire brand, you got to be careful, because your tools can make a mark on the wire and then expose the base metal, as well as the process I'm doing here on the edge. But thankfully mine's pink all the way through. So there is my ear wire, and this is the stuff I was talking about. Now, if you just have regular clear nail polish, a lot of people use that. I use this Allergy jewelry shield, and it seems to work pretty well. Now, this is also something that you can do for rings, bracelets, your eyeglasses, watches, anything that maybe you have an allergy for, some sort of like nickel or something like that, but you really like a costume piece of jewelry or something. You can just put a thin coat of this on it, and it'll last for a good long while. You'll have to reapply it every now and again, but I mean, about every 6 or 8 months, depends on how often you wear that jewelry. But I like to put this on the very tip of my ear wires that I make myself. And typically I just buy ear wires already made, because I like to use the stainless steel. But when I'm doing a design like this and I'm trying to match the metal ear wire to the actual metal that I'm using for my wire work, then this is the method that I like to do. And again, I use different tools. I have another ear wire maker that is almost like a plier. You squeeze the handle and it makes the ear wire. I've got that in another video that I'll link, so you can see me doing it that way. And then I have this lovely gadget here, and it's got 2 different types of ear wires, and then 2 different types of toggle clasps that you can make yourself using artistic wire. So I'm just going to take this and put a little dab on the end and let it dry. And it's very thin. And I'm just going to touch it here to the edge. That's it. I'm going to let that dry over here on my table. And it does smell like clear fingernail polish. It's just a little bit thinner. Okay, so I'm just taking my bent nose pliers, and I'm going to pull up on the end that's cut open towards myself, just to open. It's essentially like a jump ring, just to open this up and pop this onto my earring. Whatever side that you choose, whenever you make your own earrings, you'll just want to be sure that the fat part of the ear wire to be coming out of your ear is what's going to be on the front of the design. So that's going to be this way in my case. And then close your ear wire. So for me, I'm just going to be taking my bent nose plier and pulling it back down like I'm closing a door, making sure to give it just a little squeeze to be sure that it's nice and even. There's my first earring. For the second earring, I need to be sure that I have a piece of 20 gauge wire to make the base or the body of it, which I do, and make sure it's the 3 inches still. Yes, I do. Now, I don't really need all of that wire on the 26 gauge, so I'm using like exactly half. So where I did 4 feet, it's going to be like 2 feet of the 26-inch wire, so I still have plenty left over to do my second earring. First, I want to make my loops, and that needs a round nose plier. And this curve is kind of facing towards me. I'm just going to take my round nose pliers, kind of about 1/4 of an inch down, and then I'm going to make sure I'm at the end of my wire, or try to be right there on the end of my wire, and just roll it away from myself. Come back in there and continue to roll it until I have a loop. I like to have mine closed, so there's the loop. Then I'm going to come over here on the other side and do the same. I'm rolling it away from myself, so 1/4 of an inch down my plier, and then make a loop by rolling it away from myself. I've got carpal tunnel, so it's a little difficult, so there's a loop. Now I have 2 loopy loops. And next is to shape it. So what I did ultimately is I wound up, I started out with this, but then it was too wide for me. And I wanted to then move over to this little spool because it worked out great. So I'm going to put this on here and make sure the loops are facing upwards. And then take my fingers and push it around this spool. There we go. A lot more smooth. I'm going to take that off. I didn't have any little blurbs this time by doing it that way instead of starting off with this, and then this was a little bit too wide, but I'm still going to free form it a little bit with my fingers. So I'm just going to take it with my top loops here and kind of go towards each loop, but I don't want to misshape my little, it looks like a horseshoe, doesn't it? There is my base, and ultimately I'm going to be turning my loops with the pliers, but I don't want to do that yet because I want to be able to easily get the wire wrapped around. So we're going to get the 26 gauge and some black spinel and the garnet and copy the pattern that I did. Alrighty, so here I have my 26 gauge, and I'm going to come over here on one side. Doesn't matter which side you start out with. I need to get my bent nose pliers because this is the part when I've got my carpal tunnels activated. It's little bit difficult for me, so I use this to help me out some. Now I think I did 5 revolutions around my 20 gauge wire. I'm down here below that loop. I'm going to just push this up here in just a second, but that little bitty piece that I have sticking out right here, I'm going to take my flush cutter and we're going to trim that off. I'm going to take my bent nose pliers and then just kind of push that back around. Now that was only 4 revolutions, so I'm going to go one more time around. Oops, I'm going to have to hold this and go around like this while I'm holding. Now, I can keep pushing this back up towards the loop, so I'm not too panicked about that, so don't be worried that this is going to kind of move around on you. If you don't want it to move around and you're used to like maybe crochet, you can have a tail of this wire kind of in between your fingers over here to hold it and stabilize. You're just going to wind up cutting that off, so I don't tend to like to do that, especially on my artistic wire. I'm just going to be able to push this back up as I go along anyway, so I'm okay with that. I'm going to start my pattern of beads, and that's going to be 5 of the black spinels. These holes are really tiny and hard to see for an old lady such as myself. I was ultimately just going to do everything directly onto the 20 gauge wire, but the 20 gauge wire is too big to fit through the holes on these tiny little 2mm and 3mm beads. I know that they mentioned that they were going to do, let's see, how many beads that? There's 5. Okay, now I need a garnet. They are going to have their beads with a 1mm hole. That way, if you're like me and you're using that 20 gauge wire, you won't encounter that problem anymore. Now, I have these on here, but I'm actually going to be wrapping each individual one, and it's kind of going to go to the outside of the main body of the wire. It's going to be a little bit tricky to show you here on camera really well, but you can either do this individually with the beads, or you can do like I'm doing. Put all of your beads in your pattern on there for the first set in your pattern and wrap, and then get the next set of your pattern and wrap. Now, I'm bypassing this second side of the wire, the 20 gauge wire, with my 26 gauge wire, and then I'm just coming up. I'm essentially anchoring that little black spinel onto the wire. Now, we've fallen down quite a bit, but that's okay. We can still push this up whenever we get these beads put on here. Now, I'm going to hold this as best as I can. I'm going to come down, up, and around. And again, I'm trying to put these beads on the outside of my wire to mimic my loop, but now my loop is going to get turned after I get everything put on here. So I'm holding the bead with my left hand and trying to keep it from sliding. I'm coming down, up, and around. And if you're, somebody that's really worried about your spacing, I mean, I'm not, but you can adjust these with your finger as you go. See how I just kind of cinch that up a little bit, or you can have this come apart a little bit with your fingers before you really get it firmly in place. And I want to mimic the other earring, so I kind of did that a little bit more separate, and that's okay. We can always make an adjustment with the wire because it's not totally set in stone. Okay, so there's 5 of those, and then I have my garnet, so I'm going to let that drop right there, holding that garnet down, up, and around. I'm going to kind of compare it with my other earring. Yeah, and I'm on track there. So I need to get 5 more of the Spinels. I'm still holding on to my beadwork here with my left hand, and we have the garnet. So now I've got my first Spinel. I'm going to hold right about, oops, don't want it to go too far, right about there. And again, your spacing is just relative to your preference. And I'm going to go over, down, bypass that second loop, up, and around. And that now anchors the next bead on there. So I'm going to let one more drop my Spinel. I've got that onto my wire. I'm going to hold on with my left hand, then go down, bypass that loop, up, and around. Drop another Spinel, and just keep doing this. Down, bypass the loop, up, and around. Now that got a little bit too far compared to how I did the others, so I can just loosen that up a little bit, move that over, whoops, make sure my bead stays where it should, and then tighten my wire work with my thumb there. So your fingernails are going to be all jacked up after you get done with this, but it's going to be all right because you'll have pretty pair of earrings. So drop another Spinel, hold it in place, down, bypass the loop, up and over. There's another one. Drop the last Spinel of the pattern, down, up and over. Okay, now it's time for the garnet. Drop it, hold on to the garnet. It's easier to hold on to that garnet. Down, up and over. Each time we are bypassing this lower loop down here. So that is 1 set, 2 sets. We got enough to do a 3rd set, and that's going to match the earring over here. So I'm going to put 5 more Spinels on. So by the time I wrap these 5 Spinels, we should then be up here to the top, and I don't need another garnet. I just turned my work, which before I was like this. Now I'm going to turn it upside down. That way, as I'm holding the beads, I'm still going to be on the outside of my main wire body here. If I'd stayed this way, then my beads would be wrapped on the inside, and I don't like that. So I want to go on the outside, so I just turned it upside down, my beadwork. And I'm going to hold that garnet, same process, except I'm not having to bypass that lower loop since I've readjusted my work. So I'm just going to hold on to the garnet, make sure my little Spinel's in place. I'm going to go down, up, and over. I'm just bypassing this loop on this side. Drop another Spinel, down, up, and over. And then another Spinel, down, up, and over. Drop another Spinel, down, up, and over. And the last Spinel. I'm going to kind of move that up a little bit so that I'm closer over here. Looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to hold that, down, up, over. It's here that I'm going to need to wrap, and I'm going to do 5 wraps going all the way up to that loop. So there, that was 1 wrap, 2 wraps, 3. You want these side by side. 4 and 5. Now I can push this if I want to with my finger to go up a little bit. Okay, so now that looks pretty good. I'm gonna come around the back here and then just trim that off with my flush cutters right about there. I take my bent nose pliers and just come on the top of that little bit, push it down. That way that's not gonna be catching on anything. So there is my second earring. The next problem I had was with the heart. So I wanted to put the heart on the 20 gauge wire initially, but the hole of the bead dictates what is going to fit my wire. So I decided, well, I'll just go ahead. It's actually still strong enough for me to just use my 26 gauge wire and then feed all of the spinels and some garnets on there and do what I wound up with, just a handmade bell with the twisted wire. This is held by the 26 gauge wire. That's the smaller wire there, and the beadwork, and you want it tight enough to where it doesn't let your heart just flop over, because this is top heavy. And if you still have this problem, take a little of your leftover bit of wire, pop it in some jewelry glue, pop that right in here to the beads. That way the surface of the beads are touching. It'll kind of have a little bit of glue to hold it if the tension is too loose. You don't want an upside down heart. I'm going to follow the pattern that I did for the heart, and this is the hard part because not all of the hearts look alike. So if you're somebody that wants to do matchy-matchy with natural stone, that's kind of hard to do. Alrighty, so this is the heart I'm going to use. I'm just feeding this 26 gauge wire, and it just barely goes into this heart. And again, this is just the leftover wire from the original 4-foot length that I cut. So you can see that one piece is going to be able to handle both of this style of earring. I'm going to feed on 5 spinels and a garnet, plus an additional 2 spinels on each side of my heart. So I don't lose what's going on here. I'm holding on to the left-hand side back here in this part of my finger so that I can feed on some beads on the right-hand side and not lose everything that I'm doing, because this is where it gets a little loosey-goosey. Okay, now I've got beads on either side to match the pattern that I chose for the first earring. Now you can see this is definitely top heavy. See how it's wanting to just fall down? I've got this positioned here in the middle of this wire, and I'm just going to kind of bring this up and try to mimic what I did. It's pretty tight what I did on the other, but I just went and pulled each side of my wire up into my finger until I got pretty much this effect here. And the trick is to maintain the tension so that you can do a twist without allowing the heart to fall upside down as you're twisting the motion, and hope that it matches the first earring. So I'm just going to kind of hold the wire that's crossed over in my finger here, if you can see that, and then I'm going to twist 2, 3, and then come back and look at it. I don't want it to get crooked. Okay, see how it wants to fall? So I need a little bit more tension as I go, so I'm going to continue to twist it, and it will tighten up some more as I twist. I'm going to continue to go up just a little ways because I'm going to use that twisted metal to make the bell. And I'm trying to stay centered as I twist, so if you have to stop and look every now and again, see what it looks like, then do that. So this one kind of came over a little bit, but beadwork wise, the beads are still where I want them to be. Now you can do either side. I think I like this side better. In order to make this bell, you're going to use your round nose pliers, and it's just a little bell. I'm going to put my round nose pliers here at the base, push this over to make a 90-degree bend. I'm going to reposition my pliers to be straight up. Now my heart just went down. I want to hold that heart in place because with every movement it might tighten it up, which is what I need. So I'm going to go up, over, and down to where I make a kind of a question mark shape there. Then I'm going to put my lower jaw of the plier in that hoop that I just made, or loop. I'm going to push my heart back through there. I'm going to hand over to my left and pull those loose wires back, essentially hugging that lower jaw of the plier there. And then I'm just going to wrap around the base until I meet my bead work. So there's 1, 2, again, this is kind of tricky, 3, 4, and put my heart back in there. And I think I can go once more. I think we're good there. So I'm going to take this off. You can see how that turned out. And I'm trying to get it as close to my other earring there, but you know, if it's not going to be exact, that's okay, because it's a handmade piece of jewelry. So it's not going to be perfect every time. Just try to do your best. So now this is the back. This is the front for me. And I'm going to go on here and just trim this wire with my flush cutters. Trim that off. I'm going to save those bits there and use either my bent nose pliers or my flat nose pliers to come on top of that little bit that's sticking up and just kind of push it around. And be careful not to, you don't want to crack any of those little beads there. So now, because I made that a bell in that way, you can see that my loop is going this way. So it's front facing. That means it's going to hang on to something this way. Okay, so here is the front. So now I have this part and this part. Now I need to be able to connect all of these. And this is where I need to turn my loops on my original piece that we made. And I like to turn them to where the cut part would be facing outwards. So by that, I mean, this is the front of my earring. And so my loops they're front facing. Getting my flat nose pliers, holding the side of my earring, and I'm going to turn this that way, so onto the earring. And then I'm just going to turn it to my right. Instead of facing this way, it is now facing this way. I'm going to do that for this other loop as well. I'm going to just hang on to it, turn it to face the same way. So now, this is what we have. Everything here together then needs to be held together by a jump ring. And that's where I had made my own special little jump rings. Alright, so I have my jump ring. One side is my bent nose pliers. The other side is my flat nose pliers to hold it. And I want to be sure that this is going to pop into place. So it is nice and flush there. So that's good. So I'm holding it with my left and I'm going to do the action in my right. I'm going to pull this towards myself to open my jump ring so that I can grab hold now of my components. I'm going to be on the outside of the earring, the outer earring. Then I'm going to put the heart with the side that I want, which really at this phase it doesn't really matter, so that's neither here nor there. And then I'm going to grab hold of this other side, and now I have my earring put together. I'm going to grab hold and just close the door, so I'm going to push the right hand side away from myself so that now it's all flush. I'm going to use my flat nose pliers to kind of just cinch it. Alright, so there is the heart hanging in the outer component there. And now I'm going to add my ear wire. I'm going to open this up here, pull this up towards myself so that I can grab hold of the earring. And this is where it becomes important which way you want. So this was, I believe this, yeah, so this was going to be the front of my earring. This is the part, the fat part of the earlobe that you see on the front of somebody's face when they're wearing earrings. That's what I want to show. So I want on the front, I'm going to put this loop in. I'm going to turn it around so that I can close it now. And I'm going to take my bent nose pliers, pull it towards myself, make sure it's closed and there's no gap. Now I have my earring complete. Just a little bit off on this one, but it's still okay. Again, you know, it's handmade, so it's going to be a little bit quirky. But overall, I think it's really pretty. The difference in the hearts, of course, the size of the hearts are a little bit different as well, but I think it really turned out cute. And of course, you could always make another component there, depending on how you wrap the inner beads around your heart. Also, the thickness of this heart is more than this heart. This is more thin. This is a little bit more puffy heart bead here, so that made a difference as well in how I wrapped the beads around. But overall, they are very cute. They are not going to be perfect because this is the nature of handmade, but still beautiful. So here are the earrings. Now I did actually wind up redoing the earring that was just slightly off. I mean, it wasn't bad, but the problem was the more I was messing around with it, the more that the wire ate into one of the garnets, and so it just popped off. So that just gave me an excuse to go ahead and do up another one, and when I did, then they look more similar. So I mean, I didn't have to do that, but because of the broken garnet, I just decided, you know what, I'm too type A to just leave it like that. Here is one of the earrings, and it's got a lot of design on one side and then the other side. Again, that is that bolder opal of the hearts. Now I had to look the bolder opal up because I don't know really a whole lot about opal since I don't really work with it a whole lot, but it is good for the root chakra. It has actually blue opal in with the rock that it's in, so that's why it's called bolder opal. It helps you with clarity and stability, so it's a really good grounding stone. So I like that, and I also like the look of that. So there's one earring. Here's the other earring. There you go. There's both earrings there, and then you can see now both of their frames on the outside are more closely matching now since I fixed that, but the stones being so different, it's still causing the beads on the inner frame to lay a little bit differently. I'm not bothered by that. I still think it's pretty. It also shows consistency in the fact that this is a handmade pair of earrings and not something that a machine created. I love that light pink in with the gray of the bolder opal. There's a little hint of blue opal in there too, and then also it picks up the pink of the pinky red garnet, and the black spinel looks really cute with that. I really like how that turned out. This is my earrings for Mother's Day that I created using some very light pink artistic wire to create frames for some bolder opal hearts and black spinel with some red garnet. Again, these are all beads from Victory Gems and Beads, and there's their website. If you use my coupon code at their website, Sparkle by Monica 10, you can get 10% off of your purchase. Those are my earrings that I made for my very first project for Victory Gems and Beads. Again, I hope that you have enjoyed seeing the beautiful wire work that I've done on these. I have enjoyed working with these stones. I have not worked with anything other than the garnet before, so this was really an interesting project in order for me to put everything together. I also am really tickled about all these little stars. They don't have holes in the beads, so if you're looking for that, I do know that their website shows some of these little stars here that have the holes either in the very top or through the center. These do not have any holes at all, and the opalite stars up here do not either, so they're just pretty to look at, but you could wire wrap them if you wanted to. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could do. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and share to any of your friends that would love the sparkly enjoyment that you have here. I really appreciate you sharing that with anyone that you think might be interested, because that helps out the algorithm to boost my videos in YouTube. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to my channel, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a sparkle-rific day, y'all.